to all of you from India. My name is Rajkumar. I'm the founding Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University. It is indeed my proud privilege to welcome all of you to the 14th thematic session of this two-day conference on essentially the theme employability, entrepreneurship, and socio-economic mobility. We have a very distinguished set of leaders and transformative individuals who have contributed towards some of these issues. I have great pleasure in welcoming my colleague, Professor RONITA CHOUDHURI, Director, Startup JGU, Assistant Professor at Jindal Global Business School, and CEO and co-founder, Armadillo Digital India. Professor Dr. UTTAM GAULEE, President, Society of Transnational Academic Researchers, Star Network, Morgan State University, United States of America. Professor Dr. RHONDA LENTON, President and Vice Chancellor, York University, Canada. And my dear friend, Professor Dr. EDUARDO PENALVER, ALLAN R. TESSLER, Dean, Professor of Law, CORNELL Law School, United States of America. We also have with us Professor RAJESH CHAKRABARTI, Dean of Jindal Global Business School of OP Jindal Global University, India. Over to you, Rajesh.
Good evening, everyone. So this session is devoted to the very important question of employability, entrepreneurship, and socio-economic mobility. Now, as we all know, one of the primary reasons of higher education or primary purposes of higher education is to create employable individuals who can take the nation's economic journey forward. And employability lies at the heart of the success of any university at any point in time. Whatever education we provide, unless it adds to employability, there are questions raised. Together with that, entrepreneurship is key to taking the economy forward. And if there's anything better than getting a job, it's probably creating one. So employability and entrepreneurship lie at the objectives for all students, and definitely objectives also for universities around the world. With education comes socio-economic mobility. Higher education is almost always seen as a stepping stone to greater socio-economic status, certainly so in more developing societies. So how well are today's universities fulfilling this three-pronged agenda? And how difficult and how challenging has the current pandemic, also the associated trade wars and trade difficulties, international trade difficulties challenges that have emerged of late. The world employment situation currently does not look very nice. So according to an ILO report, there is even before the pandemic started, about 2.5 million unemployed people were joining annually, a force of 180 million people already unemployed. The real numbers out there are probably larger. The pandemic must have, or seems to have, appears to have raised those numbers multi-fold, manifold. And what is the role of the universities today around the world to create employable alumni and entrepreneurship and still lead to socio-economic mobility in this changed environment? What should universities do differently than they were doing before? Those are the questions that this session is designed to grapple with. Let me start the ball rolling with asking Professor RHONDA LENTON from York University about what her views are on the future trends of employability, particularly given the economic slowdown and negative growth rate that is probably going to be further exacerbated by the pandemic. What industries, because we know that the effect is never uniform across industries. Some industries are actually growing right now, even in the middle of all of this, and some are suffering debilitating shrinkage. How should universities evolve to help the youth build the desired skills to secure themselves a future in these troubled times? What curricular changes and what administrative initiatives should be put in place to battle with this situation? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Rajesh, thank you so much for that question. And thank you also to OP Jindal Global University for the invitation to join this very distinguished panel. You know, I want to say that even before the pandemic, we were, as you've mentioned, we were already witnessing such a huge shift in employment. You know, estimates here in Canada suggested that about 50% of all jobs are going to be impacted directly by automation and AI. So I would say that the pandemic has really just accelerated the existing trends. And we need to respond by both ensuring that we're helping young people who are coming in directly from high school, but also expanding the very important role that we play in supporting the education of working professionals, many of whom are going to have to upgrade and reskill. I've always been of the view that universities have a responsibility to help students connect the skills that they acquire in the classroom to the needs of the workforce. And I know many of my colleagues remind me always about the important role that universities play in nurturing creativity, in problem solving, critical thinking. And this is absolutely true. In fact, for the future, given that so many jobs are rapidly disappearing and new jobs are emerging at an increasing rate, it's really quite essential that we focus on the future skills and also students' ability to transfer those skills into different kinds of jobs. But we have to help them do that. And my view is, whether or not you're in the humanities or social sciences or STEM, that we have to help students articulate the particular skills that are going to be needed for the future. And I think we have to therefore be organizing universities, not just thinking about them as coming in to get the degree and then they're gone. It's about reorganizing universities as institutions for lifelong learning, that students are coming in and perhaps leaving and coming back. I want to give you just an example before I pass it on to my colleagues about our School of Continuing Studies. We have an incredibly large School of Continuing Studies. In fact, since the new school launched 5 years ago, the school has grown exponentially with over a 1,000% growth in our enrollment in that school. And it offers cutting-edge programs in big data, blockchain, cybersecurity, risk management, cloud computing, machine learning. And we have to now look at ways for students who are in continuing studies, perhaps, to be able to get credit for those programs. So there's a very easy way for students to move back and forth between degree programs and micro-credentials that might be offered through continuing studies. It's estimated that on average, students might have as many as 7 jobs, different jobs over their lifetime. So there really is this growing demand for lifelong learning, and universities need to be able to really focus on those different skills, work with employers across sectors, and help students identify and acquire the essential skills that are going to be needed for this rapidly changing labor market, in a global knowledge economy.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. Professor PENALVER, given that both leading and emerging economies have been trying to deal with the concern of educated unemployment, how do you think universities should be reimagined or transformed to respond to this concern more effectively? What approaches should universities adopt to overcome the concerns created particularly due to the employment competency gap?
First of all, let me also thank Jindal University for inviting me to participate, and like fellow panelists for joining me on this conversation. Really looking forward to it. I just wanted to start, I guess, by challenging the premise a little bit. You know, you started out by talking about employment being the kind of a fundamental purpose of the university, and I guess I would distinguish here between professional schools and undergraduate education, especially in that regard. I think, you know, universities have multiple goals, and, you know, among them, and I think probably at the heart of them, is the production and transmission of knowledge for its own sake, right? The knowledge and education has a kind of intrinsic value apart from employment outcomes that's at the heart of the university. And the professional schools are different. I mean, we exist to serve as an entry point into a profession, and employment is certainly one of our fundamental goals, and also one of the key metrics we use to assess how we're doing. So I guess I just wanted to start with that I thought that we can't lose sight of that key mission of universities in the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. But employment matters. It's one of the reasons people come to college, right? One of the reasons people seek a university education. And so it's something that we need to be attentive to, but in a way it connects up, right, with the education of our students in the broadest sense, right? And so we educate our students not just so that they get jobs, but also so that they can become better human beings, you know, more fuller persons, right, who can engage with the world using the tools that we give them in their education, and better citizens, right? One of the goals of the liberal education is to produce free citizens who can understand and engage in the political process effectively. But those things also make our students more attractive employees, right? So that the things that we do to make our students fuller human beings and better citizens also make them critical thinkers and creative people and good problem solvers, and therefore really great people to employ in a modern economy that doesn't focus so much on a specific set of skills as much as the ability to engage broadly across a changing landscape with unpredictable challenges and shifting technologies. So it's not surprising then to me that people with the university educations, do significantly better in the employment market than people without one. In the United States, people with a college degree have unemployment levels about 1/3 of people without a college degree, and earn about 3 times the income of people without a college degree. So we're doing something right. The education that we're giving our students does make them very successful in the employment market, but it's in part, I think it's the indirectness of the way we approach that, right? That we're not trying to train them up for a particular set of skills as much as give them broad intellectual tools that they can use in a whole range of settings over the course of their lifetime. I do think that changing technology and rapidly changing technology puts a premium on education in the employment market in a way, because it sort of dissociates employment from knowledge of a specific set of facts or a specific set of skills, right? It really pushes on the breadth of intellect and the way that allows you to be flexible as technology shifts underneath your feet. But I really liked what President Lenton said about lifelong learning and the way that the shifting technology landscape really brings students back to us over and over again. We see that in the law as well, that our students really want to continue to engage with the law school, not just as a network in the profession, but also as a place where they can come back and continue to hone their knowledge and learn about shifting technologies and the way that's impacting the practice of law. So one of the things that we're doing is really building out our online educational opportunities, and we've launched an online master's degree for non-lawyers who want to learn about the law, but that gives us a kind of framework that allows us to engage even with lawyers who can take advantage of some of the resources that we can deliver online in a way that would be much more difficult through in-person means of transmission.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So switching gears to entrepreneurship, RONITA. Question for you is this. We already have specialized academic courses in entrepreneurship in many universities. Apart from those, how can universities serve as a launch pad for successful entrepreneurs? There are already programs like the Launch YU program at York University, Startup JGU at our own JGU. And even at Cornell, there is the Entrepreneurship Law Clinic at Cornell Law School. So how are these programs modeled to enable effective entrepreneurial careers?
Great, thank you, JGU, thank you, Rajesh, and thank you, the panelists, for being here. So, I mean, I'm going to speak on entrepreneurship on more of the meta and a global level. I think to speak about specific programs that can happen, I mean, each needs to be contextualized to their country, to their population, and their demographics, right? But if we're looking on like the larger scale of entrepreneurship programs that exist outside of academia, I mean, some larger themes that I'm, and us at Startup JGU, we speak about this quite a bit, is, you know, how do we look at providing a space for students to have an entrepreneurial journey while they're in the university still, right? Often entrepreneurship in general, no matter what age you are, there's gonna be bumps, there's gonna be failures in the road, and you have to pick yourself up and then continue to learn and keep going. So what is an environment that we can create within a university to allow that to happen, right? I mean, we've spoken about it a number of times of how can we at least have our students learn how to fail, right? Learn how to fail, learn how to try an idea out, see that it doesn't work, can they reflect on their learnings, and then keep going. And I think that's what is really different from just academic courses on, you know, making a business plan and getting investment, is can we build resiliency in our students? Can we build a creative thinking? And it's an ongoing process. It's reiterative, but just to make sure that the students continuously try. And we've seen that with many of the successful students that have come out of JGU as entrepreneurs. They would have tried, you know, one or two different business ideas during the university, and then, you know, it clicked afterwards. So I think those, having a safe space for students to take on risks, fail, try new ideas, and this can often incorporate the career services as well for recent graduates, right? Where, you know, if there is a student that wants to take an entrepreneurial idea forward in a volatile economy that is a little bit, you know, shaky, can our career services provide a safer space for them to try out their idea so that they can come back to the university afterwards and be supported by the university? So I think it is about creating a nurturing environment. How I've always looked at entrepreneurship in general is really like a highway system. You know, each student's gonna go in their different kind of car. They're gonna go at, you know, with their own kind of machinery, and what we can provide are a certain amount of guardrails so, you know, they don't end up in the bushes, right? So that they continue going forward. They're not going back, they're not veering off course, you know, and they might go off and exit on their own, but can we still provide those guardrails so that they just don't fall off the highway in general? So I think that's the imperative here. With what's going on in COVID, I mean, it's accelerated many of the issues that already existed. And, you know, with companies hiring freeze and all those kind of things, coupled with the internet and breaking down barriers to entry for lots of different businesses, I mean, it's a fabulous time for students to try new ideas, use different, you know, open source tools and start their own businesses, but we just have to be there to support them and let them know that we're here as guardrails, we're here to help you, you know, try and try again.
So let me ask Professor GAULEE this question, which is different from employment and entrepreneurship. What role do you see universities playing in driving positive socio-economic mobility? You know, you head the STAR Scholars Network. what role do research driven by forums and international organizations like the STAR Network play in advancing global social mobility? What innovative research methodologies could be adopted in aiding this?
Thank you, Dean CHAKRABARTI, for this great opportunity. First of all, I would definitely like to congratulate VC Raj and the entire OP Jindal Global University crew on becoming the first Indian private university and your newly established outstanding ranking in the global arena. This is a testament of what is possible in India. And I think this is a rare instance for a 10-year-old university to have achieved all this. Congratulations. STAR is an international forum of scholars aiming to advance global social mobility. Over the decades, we have been discerning a phenomena that there is a stagnance both at the bottom and the top end of income distribution around the world. A phenomena that the experts of social mobility describe as intergenerational stickiness. So if you happen to be born at the bottom 10% income bracket in India, you are likely to remain in that bracket for the next 7 generations. That's what the projection coming out of World Economic Forum SOE. So America and China are not doing much better either. So the countries, the Nordic countries are doing good. So if the same scenario happens in Finland or Norway, that person could come out to be average income earner in 1 or 2 generations. So there are problems. So our role as intellectuals is to critically assess and provide scenarios. Dean CHAKRABARTI, you laid out the context very well, and I quite agree with VC LENTON and Professor CHOUDHURI on the current context and way forward. Students cannot be successful without having that non-judgmental space to learn to fail. And philosophically, however, I tend to agree with Professor PENALVER. We have started intentionally, actually, challenging the authorities because scholars can only do so much. So we ask blunt questions. This question probably would be most appropriate to Honorable Minister Pokhriyal, who is not here. I happen to marry a woman from his constituency, brilliant Indian woman, and I'm so impressed with India. And congratulations on the forward-thinking national policy that is laid out recently. But our direct questions to the institutions like OP Jindal University is, what is your initiative to promote social mobility? Have you recruited anyone from the slum? OP Jindal University is not solely responsible for the Indian slums. That's not what I'm saying. But you can recruit one and create one story that will inspire others. There is so much energy, enthusiasm, and talent in the slums. But what is missing is the opportunity. What is missing is the role models. So we want to see that some stories are created there. Star Scholars is always willing to give a supportive hand to those institutions who are willing to create those stories today that will inspire the developing world tomorrow. You asked questions about methodologies. I would suggest the researchers take an eclectic approach. Whether you use buzz mining, trend tracking, competitive analysis, brainstorming, body storming, context analysis, expert interviews, social media research, do not forget the bottom line. Always ask yourself, is it working? Is it moving the needle? Is it producing the knowledge that is relevant to your community? Do not think in terms of the prescriptions of those international journals. Tell your story. After all, the end goal of your research should not be publication. That is just an outcome. The end goal should be the social impact. So how can we make it most consequential is a key question, perhaps. So to foster entrepreneurship, I would summarize in 2 words: reach out, create career opportunities, connect students with their ideal personalities through the networks. This pandemic has made it clear that you do not necessarily need to fly across the continents to meet and interact with someone on this planet. The world has recently witnessed that when the world is plagued by the ravaging pandemic, India was able to connect its 330 million students online for remote instruction. This very global conference is a demonstration of intellect, enormity, the courage, the technology, and the scintillating brilliance. India has the opportunity to unleash that potential by having its young men and women connect with their brothers and sisters who have been successful around the globe, particularly in the developed countries like the United States. According to the World Economic Forum, over 65% of today's kids are going to work a job that hasn't been invented yet. Now, we can't train people for jobs that don't exist, but we can future-proof them by connecting them with people working in industries at the vanguard of change, like EdTech, FinTech, MedTech, AI, robotics, nanotechnology, brain research, 3D printing, in combination with the mobile networks and computing. Career communities will create opportunities for people to be in touch with people several steps ahead of them, who can identify gaps, opportunities, and roles, and even give them access to jobs. Salesforce, for example, is a $17 billion US company which employs thousands of Indians. And in the days ahead, they have a plan to retain 250,000 more Indian young men and women from India. So here, I believe the biggest barrier to entrepreneurship is the mental barrier. The syndrome of self-doubt is so endemic that it even seeps into the people at policy levels. That's what kills possibilities. We are having this dialogue at a time when India had just released its national policy, which is commendable in terms of its forward-thinking stance. However, I must raise a question here, or I will be doing a disservice to this intellectual community. How does the national education policy look at the private institutions such as the O.P. Jindal Global University, which is now emerging as a jewel of India? Is the policy so heavy towards homogenization that it may go on to stifle innovation? India has committed to invest 6% of GDP in higher education, which is commendable, but is that enough? I'm just asking. And to produce tomorrow's educational leaders and ministers who can think in entrepreneurial ways, I think entrepreneurship should be at the heart of curriculum. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor GAULEE. Let's move on to a slightly, what do we call it, the rapid fire round, not too rapid, but quicker response on some of these themes that have already been flagged and discussed in the first round. So let me turn to President Lenton and ask this question, which is almost a follow-up on Professor GAULEE's thoughts. So how are students perceiving this question of economic mobility? Is there despondency? Is there hope? Is the pandemic changed anything fundamental? And what role do the universities have in keeping the hope alive, so to speak?
Thank you so much for that question. You know, I think it's incredibly important that we keep in mind that research has consistently shown that at least 2/3 of all new emerging jobs will require higher education. It's already been mentioned that research shows how much better students fare in terms of, you know, their life-term earnings, but also in terms of their not experiencing unemployment when they come from a university education. And, you know, philosophically, I actually think we all agree that we all understand how important it is that universities do provide these fundamental skills that are so important in a changing knowledge economy, a rapidly changing knowledge economy, these critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, digital skills, technological skills are also going to be obviously increasingly important. And, you know, it's been shown recently in some countries that after many, many years of steady social mobility, that in fact some income gaps are starting to increase again. And what is fundamentally important, including in Canada, is that we are not only increasing the university participation rate, but we're also ensuring that all students have access to higher education. This is a very particular commitment of York University, that while we're a research-intensive university, we have never lost sight of the importance of access, of not leaving talent behind, and making sure that all students are able to, you know, fulfill and contribute to society. And I want to say that at the same time that we're providing those students with those fundamental skills that are going to be so important for them, those very broad-based transferable skills, we're also supporting them while they're in university. You know, York has 7 different entrepreneurship incubators. And we have many of our students who, while they're taking their programs, are starting up their own startups. In last year, our students and the support of York University, we supported 225 different startups. We connect our students with outside entrepreneurs who work together. We have a special work-study program where our students can hire other students to help them with their startups. They generated 11.5 million in funding. They generated 8.5 million in revenue, and they created 167 jobs. So there's no reason why in a university setting you can't actually combine all that creative learning that for which universities are known, and which frankly is really what employers are looking for. Employers want students to come with those broad-based skills, but at the same time, have students, if they want, before they even graduate, start their own startup. And you know, the benefits that kind of combination does. You know, just in one example, I'll give you quickly in our Schulich School of Business, we have students working with their own expertise with small businesses, with other businesses in the city of Toronto, to help them move their businesses online, their products and their services. So it just gives you a huge idea of what's possible while students are getting their degrees to cultivate their own startup companies, their entrepreneurship, and so that when they graduate, they're already really hitting the ground running.
I wanted to just jump in on this point about social mobility. I think it's really important. And, you know, Cornell was founded as this school, you know, our motto is, I would found an institution where any person can find instruction in any study, and that any person, you know, Ezra Cornell really meant any person, and he wanted people to come who, you know, from all kinds of modest backgrounds and study at the university. And it was, you know, we're the land grant university for New York State, but we're part of the Ivy League. So it's, you know, I think kind of both pieces of that are really important, right? We provide an education that lets our students, and I think this is true for universities generally, right? We provide an education that creates the foundation for success for our students, and so the education has to be superb, right? That higher education is providing. But to me, and this goes to what Professor GAULEE was saying, if we just focus on the students that we have, we're missing a really important part of the social mobility question, because the barrier to entry is really what reinforces the decline in social mobility that we've seen, right? That it's so hard to get into elite universities. The admissions criteria really weed out people from more modest backgrounds, and so you see very little economic diversity in among American elite universities, in some cases really shockingly low levels. Cornell is among the more economically diverse Ivy League schools, but the economic diversity is something that we need to work on, and it requires thoughtful efforts, not just at the admission stage, but in terms of how you support those students as they come through the university, because students from very modest backgrounds, when they get to the university, confront a whole range of challenges in terms of staying there, succeeding, and getting through. Just simple things like food security, can be a real challenge for poor students at a university, even if we're giving them, a full ride in terms of tuition and even housing. The challenges that they're facing on the home front are so significant that it really can be a distraction from their education. And so, schools need to be thoughtful about how we admit people, right? So that we're not just reinforcing or reproducing the sort of economic structure of our society, but also then how we support the students as they come through, so that students from all backgrounds can succeed and get the education that we're trying to deliver.
Thank you. Let me move to RONITA. RONITA, it seems women entrepreneurs seem to face some special challenges, even in the entrepreneurship space. How can universities enhance their entrepreneurship programs to overcome these challenges for women entrepreneurs? What can be done differently? What should be done differently?
Sure. For this question, I'm going to speak a little bit more specific to the Indian context. The role of women and things like that, it differs per country. And right now, we're in India, so I'm going to speak to that. I think what we're seeing at the moment, or the challenge at hand, is not that it's not that women are, just genetically different entrepreneurs at all. It's not that. We're not saying that women are just genetically different as bosses or different as entrepreneurs. But the scenario that we're finding ourselves in is that there's very few women role models in entrepreneurship in India, I'd say. And what we need to do is provide more role models to our Indian women, or all of our student body. So that women that are part of our university become aware of the different options. Because we don't want to say, female entrepreneurship is just this way and that's just how it has to be. No, what we want to do is make sure that all of our female students and everyone in our community realize that there's different ways to be a CEO or to be a founder or to be an entrepreneur or a community organizer, and make sure that they see that they're actually able to see and interact with the type of women that are out there, to see what is possible, So right now, that is what we're really facing and dealing with at Startup JGU, because we have incredibly smart women with great ideas. We're working very closely with one student of ours who's starting a sustainable fashion venture on campus. And then I'm working with another student of ours who's looking at providing more research and data on how to have more LGBTQ+ workplaces in India, and what are some practices that need to be done so that our startup entrepreneurs can provide these type of workspaces. So what we're looking to do is just provide exposure, provide different role models, show different options to the students, and then the students themselves can start making the decisions. But if we just show a certain type of, women entrepreneur as, whether it's more masculine features or a certain, whatever it might be, many girls and women might not see themselves in that. and they might just step away from entrepreneurship even though they have it in them to do it. So I think as long as we consistently provide exposure, provide communication, provide role models, and show different options to our women and girls, we can have much more entrepreneurship. I think also for the Indian context, we also need to look the other way as well, where there are plenty of moms and women who are working and running their small businesses, right? Whether it's food catering or, you know, a garment store, whatever it is. And we have to show appreciation for those kind of entrepreneurs as well. You know, entrepreneurship doesn't just mean you have to start an app for 1 billion people here, right? Entrepreneurship can mean a small business, and that's equally as good as a startup. So these are kind of the challenges that we're facing and that we're trying to overcome, right? That there's not one way to be a woman boss or anything like that.
Fantastic. Thank you, RONITA. Professor GAULEE, how can we broad base our efforts in virtually everything? Entrepreneurship is a quick example that, well, in most business schools, most universities, there's a specific center, specific program, specific set of courses that are devoted towards building entrepreneurship. And I'm just talking about entrepreneurship as one example. Almost any other quality, that seems like universities are very often a collection of focused enterprises. How can we broad base our efforts so it spans across programs, across departments, across schools, whether it is raising economic mobility, whether it's entrepreneurship? Your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Dean Chakrabarti. I think this is probably the best question of the entire conference and probably the most difficult to answer also. I'll take a stab. See, I think I have already emphasized that Entrepreneurship 101 should be made mandatory for all students because they are going to be tomorrow's leaders, politicians, policymakers, and executives in companies, in organizations, and in institutions. And I really appreciate the word that you used, Dean Chakrabarti, in your question, broad-based. We often think of education policy as if it is self-contained in itself, like we just celebrated the release of a national education policy. But does education work that way? We cannot and we should not attempt to see education policy in a vacuum. In fact, education policy should be in tandem with other national priorities, such as the labor policy, industrial policy, the fiscal policy, even the foreign policy, for example, which is so important in determining your market in this age of interconnected knowledge economy. Look at TikTok. Look at Huawei. Where is the market? It's not nearly enough to create a product, right? You have to determine the market, and we have to definitely take the nerve of the constantly changing geopolitical situations. So again, in the context of newly released national education policy, I would like to recommend India. I would like to commend India for a forward-thinking move. But there are so many commendable items in the new policy, yet we must ask a few things. For example, in the World Bank's report 2020 on ease of doing business, India ranks 63rd. So it's one of the fastest growing economies. It has done a lot of progress over the several decades, but there is a long way to go. So how does a startup become a success? How does an enthusiastic young man or woman in a college become tomorrow's entrepreneur? right? A lot of startups fail. And we talk about safe space to fail, which is very key. But again, in the larger context, how is the ecosystem? How are the soft infrastructures, not just the hard infrastructure? What are those policies, the laws, the institutions, and also the mindset, as you said. Mindset is that young person is not the only one who is responsible. We have examples of Tilak Mehta in India, who is a 13-year-old boy who started a 1 crore company delivering parcels same day. We need to empower the institutions that provide that kind of opportunities. So India's social mobility score, I think I highlighted, is very poor. It is 72 out of the 82 economies measured by World Economic Forum. Long way to go ahead. So there are examples of Tilak Mehta, there are examples of Munaf Kapadia, who left the Google job, white collar job, to start a samosa industry, Bori Kitchen in India. And there are professors like Professor Choudhuri who are running incubators. But how are they empowered? Does Professor Choudhuri have that discretionary budget or resource to empower a potential entrepreneur? So how are we doing this? How are we intervening the ecosystem? So it's not just one young person, or it's not just the universities. Universities can only do so much. So I think this is right time that we look at the policymakers and tell them, let's make India more business friendly. We should be standing third, not 63rd. So we need to be celebrating the success of the institutions such as the O.P. Jindal Global University. And celebrating is not nearly enough. Empowering them by providing research funding, by providing them with scholarship monies so they can reach out to the slums. They can recruit other talent that is so abundantly available in the Indian soil. But hundreds of thousands of talented Indians are leaving the country seeking higher education in other so-called developed countries.
Right.
So there is so much opportunity. And I think this is right time. I see a great commitment from the government also. And I congratulate and commend again O.P. Jindal Global University for bringing together the policymakers, the intellectuals from around the world, and Honorable Minister himself to this amazing global virtual conference. And we are really happy to be part of this history-making, epoch-making moment. But we are very optimistic, and we believe that we intellectuals are heard.
Thank you.
At this point.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. GAULEE. We have with us a set of few very interesting questions from the audience. I'll probably have time for just a few of them, unfortunately, but I'm going to pick up a few which at least intrigues me the most and go in that order. And I'll request the panelists to try to answer them in a minute or less so that we can reach a longer set of questions. So let me start with President Lenton and ask her this question, which I find quite intriguing. The question is that, well, post 2050, 30 years down the road, populations are going to shrink in most countries. Should universities do something about them or think about that question today? Is it too early? Is there something that universities are currently doing about that expected longer term phenomenon? Any thoughts?
You know, I'll just say that in our recent university academic plan for the next 5 years that we just passed by Senate, In addition to the normal sets of priorities that you often see in plans, we posed a challenge for our entire community. York University has a very long history of being, from its origins, being committed to social justice, building inclusive, sustainable societies. And we posed a challenge about what the university was going to do to start working across sectors to take up some of the big global issues. Some people refer to them as black swans, gray swans, but that the world is facing. Because what impacts one place in the world has already been said, it impacts every place in the world. And universities have a unique opportunity to bring together, which is so fundamental for these big challenges, all sectors, the public sector, the private sector, governments, health, educational institutions, so that we are working together to figure out problems such as, climate change, homelessness, declining population. These are important issues, and if we don't start taking them on now, I have 3 daughters whose future I worry about very much.
Dean PENALVER, next question is for you. So the question asked is, do you think higher education institutions require cross-curricular development in order to nurture entrepreneurial skills in students, particularly in a law school context or in a major Ivy League university? How important is this cross-curricular interdisciplinary linkages that you think that plays a role in shaping a student for the post-graduation challenges in the real world?
Well, I think it's absolutely important, not just for entrepreneurship, but just for that production and transmission of knowledge. The disciplinary boundaries are inherently artificial, and we're all seeking the truth, but we do it, using different disciplinary methodologies. We have different areas of interest and focus, but and I think one of the challenges, obviously we have this departmental structure or college structure that separates the disciplines from each other. But why even be on a single campus at a great university if you can't find ways to really cut across those boundaries? And law schools have always been good at this. I think because we're defined by our subject matter rather than by a disciplinary approach, and we get sometimes our colleagues across campus sometimes poke at us, as being a little bit dilettantish. But we like to think of ourselves as kind of a crossroads for the different disciplines to come and be welcome and engage with each other, with regard to the topics that we focus on. And I definitely have colleagues from the government department or from the philosophy department who tell me that they love coming down to the law school to engage on these issues because it's like a judgment-free zone. They can come and they can bring their disciplinary approaches, or they can leave them behind, and they don't feel like we're going to think less of them for that. And we really welcome the conversations across those boundaries. You definitely, there are each discipline, each academic discipline brings its own set of kind of assumptions and has its own blind spots. And so if we can get that engagement across disciplines, you're able to come closer to the truth, and also it forces people to rethink their priors a little bit in ways that I think really move the enterprise forward.
Thank you, Dean. RONITA, what, if any, changes have the pandemic brought to incubators, like Startup JGU, for instance, or more broadly, any incubator?
Yeah, I think this is still something we're figuring out. I think we haven't even gotten into the effect part of the cause and effect situation that's happening. Of course, we all know it's gone online. Things have gotten much more virtual. I think what we're seeing too, bits and pieces, is, especially in the Indian context, the importance of having more digitized supply chains, so that when there is volatility like we're seeing, the supply chains, at least the back-end supply chain of all the numerous trade, manufacturing industries in the country, are able to speed up and meet the demand that exists, right? I think what we've all kind of come to realize internally is how much we need our country to work together much more strongly and much more formally than it has been, right? So I think this COVID response, being on lockdown, has definitely been a driving impetus for accelerators and incubators and investors to look at companies, startups, ventures that are looking to digitize a supply chain much more, right? A lot of that back end to move from the informal to the formal, because that is so much. I mean, we know we have lots of business school students who come from these families that have been working and operating in manufacturing trade in a certain way for a very, very long time. And it seems very clear that that needs to be updated. And a good way to do that, to also support the country as it tries and gets back on its feet, is to have more incubators and accelerators looking at this digital transformation. I think, you know, there is another side of this, that there is a way to make these more inclusive. Incubators, accelerators, define it even a little bit differently than it has in the past. It is becoming much more inclusive just by being more global, opening it up. For instance, Startup School and Y Combinator is now opening it up globally. You know, you can join in if they're not able to meet on campus. So that is happening. But I think without having a physical need to have a physical presence at an incubator and accelerator, I think the incubators themselves need to kind of come up and meet, you know, the startups and the entrepreneurs where they are, right? And it's a significant opportunity to also invest in more creative industries, different industries that haven't been looked at before, because now there's not a physical constraint, and, you know, we've all kind of adapted to a digital way of working.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Professor GAULEE, the last 1 minute is yours. What can universities do to effectively reach out better?
I think Professor Choudhury made a great point here in connecting the investors, incubators, accelerators, and institutions. I think connection is definitely the key here. I have had an opportunity to serve in a national think tank here as a program director, and I still serve in Community College Teachers Assembly as a national judge who decides who gets the Bellwether Award that recognizes the most outstanding programs that colleges are coming up with in the area of innovation in instruction and planning, governance, and finance, and in workforce development. So we host policy summits in talent pipeline management and entrepreneurship and many other relevant issues here. So it reminds me of 2 examples of last year's Bellwether Award winner programs. If I may, Central Arizona College. Their program was recognized as one of the best in the workforce development last year because their innovative project entitled Education at the Speed of Industry is recognized for creating strategic alliances that promote community and economic development. The program exemplifies a successful industry partnership. This particular program works with Sund Construction, Inc. And in Texas, Alamo colleges, they have a program called Industrial Technology. Even a 2-year program, the graduates are making a decent income. So these programs are through and through proving one thing, that to engage the demographic advantage that countries like India have, we can engage them by providing them with these skills, like industry and what is the demand in the market, and how we can be connecting the institutions with the market. How can we get the input from the market? I think there are so many good examples in India also, but I think sky is the limit at the rising economy. So Government is spending, I think they are yet to open the heart, but I think we should rely more on the market so that we can future-proof our young men and women, because we are teaching, we are educating them at some uncertain times and trying to prepare them for the jobs that are yet to be invented yet. So if we keep that in mind and bring our policies, align our policies and forces, I think India is at the cusp of becoming the top global economy very soon.
Thank you, Professor GAULEE. That really makes us optimistic, as long as our policymakers are listening. Thank you all to this wonderful panel, President LENTON, Dean PENALVER, Professor Choudhury, Professor GAULEE. It has been absolutely fabulous moderating this panel with all of you. Thanks a ton. Over to you, Raj.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating discussion. I really personally enjoyed it a lot. I want to particularly thank President LENTON and Dean PENALVER. Both Osgoode Hall Law School and Cornell Law School have been our very special partners for a very long time. So we have a relationship with both your universities. I'm also grateful to Professor UTTAM GAULEE and my colleague, Professor RONITA CHOUDHURI, for their presence and participation. And of course, my colleague, Dean CHAKRABARTI, for moderating the session. In fact, one of the things that clearly is emerging, and this was discussed briefly, but COVID-19 does create a possibility for many more young people thinking in terms of entrepreneurship and recognizing that as a foundation for future socio-economic mobility. And it actually transcends disciplinary boundaries. Even in a relatively young and small university like us, we've seen students across different schools coming together to create new projects and initiatives. And so this could be potentially a wake-up call for universities where, despite all the efforts, including career services officers and well-intended administrators, the fact remains that we don't have enough jobs that will enable our students to get after they study. And clearly, if return on investment is being measured on the basis of the starting salaries for these graduates, then we need to reimagine the entire ecosystem of employability and entrepreneurship and socio-economic mobility. So I want to say that it's been an absolute delight to hear all of you, and thank you very much for being part of the session. You are, Rajesh, only 5 minutes late, but you're pretty. We have a 10-minute break before the next session. So thank you to all of you, and stay safe and stay healthy.